Welcome to FinStechs from Laura and Anthony.
Great to be here.
Today, we're jumping into something pretty exciting, actually. It's the camera showdown between three big flagship phones from early 2025.
Yep, we've got the Apple iPhone 16 Pro, the Google Pixel 9 Pro, and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra.
And we're putting them head-to-head, looking directly at image quality across, well, a whole bunch of different shooting situations.
The goal really is to get under the hood.
Yeah.
Figure out the strengths, maybe find some weaknesses for each camera system.
It's always fascinating how different their approaches are, isn't it? Apple's got its look. Google leans heavily on that AI stuff.
Right, the computational photography. And Samsung often comes in with like serious hardware muscle and lots of lens options.
Yeah.
It makes for some really interesting comparisons.
Definitely. Okay, let's start with the basics, the main sensor. We looked at a well-lit outdoor scene first. That fluorescence art installation, typical London day, overcast, bit rainy.
Perfect for testing dynamic range, actually.
So what jumped out first?
Well, how they handled exposure was quite different. The iPhone 16 Pro, it gave us the darkest image.
Darker, okay. Is that good or bad?
It's a choice.
Yeah.
It meant it held on to detail in the bright clouds
Yeah.
really well. So people like that for editing later.
I bet there's a trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. You lost some detail down in the shadows, and the colors of the art itself felt a bit less vibrant.
Gotcha. And the Pixel 9 Pro took a completely different path, didn't it?
Oh, totally. The Pixel was much warmer
Mm,
and flatter in terms of
it's
contrast.
the latter.
Yeah, less punchy straight out of the camera. It did lose some of that cloud detail the iPhone kept. But interestingly, it was actually the sharpest image overall, pulled out some really fine textures.
So Google's prioritizing raw detail there.
Seems like it, yeah. Even if the image isn't immediately as, like, wow.
Which leaves the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Sounds like it tried to split the difference.
Pretty much, yeah. It arguably produced the nicest image overall in that test. It had the best dynamic range, good detail in the bright and dark bits.
And the colors. Samsung's known for vibrant colors.
They were vibrant, definitely. But maybe a bit more refined this time. Less, over the top than sometimes in the past. A good balance.
Okay, let's switch gears. Indoors now. Artificial light, a patisserie scene. How did the main sensors cope there?
Right, so here the iPhone 16 Pro, again, it really nailed the white balance. Colors look very accurate under those lights.
I sense a but coming.
But yeah, that high contrast thing continued. So again, some detail got lost in the darker areas, like on the pastries themselves.
And Samsung was kind of similar in that spot.
It was, yeah. High contrast, quite a bit of sharpening noticeable on the S25 Ultra too.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a slight magenta tint to the whites in this shot.
Okay. But the Pixel did well here, you said.
It really did. The Pixel 9 Pro gave the warmest image, but critically, it had the best dynamic range indoors. Kept detail everywhere.
Color's good too.
Excellent color accuracy, yeah. Best detail overall. It just looked, right? Google's processing seems really strong in these complex indoor lighting setups.
Interesting. All right, architecture time. St. Paul's Cathedral. What did that show us?
This really highlighted the different processing styles. The iPhone 16 Pro, actually a really appealing shot. The stonework had this nice, stark relief, good texture, and the colors felt spot on.
Both Apple and Samsung brightened the cathedral itself, didn't they?
They did, yeah. Both tried to lift the subject, but the analysis suggested the iPhone's result was just a bit more refined, superior in this specific case compared to the Samsung.
And the Pixel focused on the sky instead.
Exactly. The Pixel 9 Pro prioritized getting the bright sky exposure right, which unfortunately meant St. Paul's itself looked a bit underexposed.
Even though the detail was there.
Yeah, the detail capture was excellent, but the overall balance wasn't quite right because it prioritized the sky so much. A clear algorithmic choice.
Let's talk close-ups. Macro, but using the main cameras, not the dedicated modes. What happened there?
Yeah, this was revealing. The iPhone gave a bright shot, but the processing felt really heavy. Oversaturated colors, loads of contrast, and the background blur, the bokeh, it just looked a bit unnatural, almost artificial.
Okay. And Samsung. In the middle again.
Kind of.
Yeah.
The Galaxy S25 Ultra had a nicer, more pleasing bokeh, and the colors were more consistent across the frame, but still a bit oversaturated, and it didn't capture quite as much fine detail as the Pixel managed.
Ah, so the Pixel nailed the close-up detail.
Absolutely. The Pixel 9 Pro had the best foreground detail by far, and the bokeh looked the most convincing, most natural.
Colors.
Most true-to-life colors, too, though maybe a touch underexposed. But for pure detail up close, Pixel was the winner there.
All right, let's talk motion. Freezing action in good light. How did they compare?
So here, the iPhone and the Galaxy seemed quite similar in their approach. Both did a decent job stopping motion, like moving water.
Any difference between them?
The Galaxy S25 Ultra actually had slightly better color reproduction in that dynamic scene.
And the Pixel, did it try something different?
It did. The Pixel 9 Pro seemed to go for a longer exposure, probably trying to grab more overall detail in the whole frame.
But the downside?
Motion blur. You could see it clearly in the water. So while it captured great detail in the static parts, the moving parts were blurred.
So who won that round?
Well, the Galaxy took the best motion shot, but the Pixel captured better detail overall in the scene if you ignore the blur.
Kind of a split decision.
Now, the big one for many, zoom. Different hardware here, right?
Yep. iPhone's got that 5x tetraprism, folds light sideways. Pixel uses a 5x periscope, more traditional long lens. And Samsung goes big with both a 3x and a 5x optical telephoto, plus that crazy 100x digital zoom.
So different tools for the job.
Yeah.
How did they perform across the zoom range? Let's start with Apple.
The iPhone 16 Pro was impressively consistent with detail. From ultra-wide right up to 25x digital, the detail held up well. But it was consistently a bit underexposed compared to the others, especially noticeable as you zoomed in.
And the Pixel, more variable. Exactly. The processing on the Pixel 9 Pro looked quite different between the ultra-wide 1x and the telephoto lens. Some underexposure at the wide end.
But the telephoto itself.
Impressive, actually, especially at higher digital zoom levels, up to 30x. Its algorithms did a remarkable job keeping fine details looking natural, often better, more natural texture than the Samsung at those high zooms.
But overall consistency. Sounds like Samsung might take the crown here.
It did, yeah. The Galaxy S25 Ultra was just the most consistent performer right across its huge zoom range, 0.6x all the way to 100x.
In what ways?
Dynamic range stayed good, colors were consistent, detail held up really well, and in the specific test scene we looked at, it actually handled cloud detail better and had more accurate color science than the Pixel at similar zoom levels. Those dual telephotos just give it incredible flexibility and consistency.
Okay, critical test time, low light, 2 scenes, a neon sign, and then Piccadilly Circus at night. Neon sign first.
Right. For the neon sign, the iPhone 16 Pro gave the most true-to-life result. Accurate white balance, colors looked right, good detail in the sign and the dark areas around it.
Pixel, what was its priority?
Clearly the sign itself. It exposed perfectly for the bright neon, but that meant everything else around it went very dark. Less detail there, a very focused approach.
And Samsung.
Samsung went the other way. The S25 Ultra brightened up the whole scene, trying to pull detail from the shadows. But it made the image look a bit flat, and the colors went overly warm, with a kind of unnatural green tint from the lights.
Not ideal. Okay, what about the chaos of Piccadilly Circus? Lots of bright screens, dark corners.
Super challenging. The Pixel, again, it focused on the brightest bits, those big screens, which meant the darker parts of the scene were underexposed.
iPhone and Samsung took a similar approach here.
More similar to each other, yeah. Both tried for a more balanced exposure overall.
But who did better?
Well, the Samsung, the S25 Ultra, actually handled the bloom from those bright screens a bit better, less flare. But the iPhone 16 Pro ultimately delivered better overall detail across the scene, more accurate colors, and a better white balance. It just seemed to manage that complex mix of lighting more effectively.
Let's talk portrait mode. Everyone loves that blurry background look.
Yeah, all three default to a 2x crop for portraits, and you can adjust the blur, the simulated aperture after the fact, which is great.
And they offer different zoom levels for portraits too.
They do. Pixel gives you 1.5x and 2x.
Yeah.
iPhone has 1x, 2x, and 5x, and Galaxy offers the most. 1x, 2x, 3x, and 5x. Lots of options for framing.
How good were they at cutting the subject out from the background? That edge detection.
Some real differences here. The Pixel 9 Pro actually struggled the most. You could see some noticeable errors around the edges of the subject, especially with fine details like hair.
Really? Okay, who did best?
Samsung. The Galaxy S25 Ultra's edge detection was excellent. Even with tricky bits like wispy hair, it did a clean job.
Yeah.
And the overall image felt the most natural, most true to life.
And the iPhone's portrait.
The iPhone 16 Pro gave a warmer look, higher contrast, maybe took a few more artistic liberties, you could say.
But was it good?
Oh yeah, it was a very pleasing image. Nice, smooth focus, fall off, skin tones looked good, plenty of detail. Just a different aesthetic preference, perhaps.
Right, makes sense. Last camera, selfies, specifically the widest view for groups.
Okay, selfies. Honestly, the differences felt a bit smaller here compared to the main cameras.
But there were differences.
For sure. The Pixel 9 Pro definitely had the widest field of view, great for squeezing more people in. and it also applied the most obvious face brightening.
And color. iPhone versus Samsung.
The iPhone 16 Pro had this slight, sepia tint, a warmer look. The Galaxy S25 Ultra went for more saturation.
Anything else stand out?
Well, the Samsung's white balance on the eyes looked particularly flattering. But for overall facial detail, even with that wider shot, the Pixel actually seemed to pull ahead slightly.
Interesting trade-offs. We absolutely have to talk video. 4K, 60 frames per second. How did they compare?
Okay, video. Looking purely at image quality, the Pixel 9 Pro was maybe a small step behind the other two. A bit more noise, some artifacting, especially when things got darker or when there was movement.
And Samsung, still going for vibrancy.
Absolutely. The S25 Ultra delivered the most vibrant footage, punchy colors. And the audio it captured was also the warmest and fullest sounding.
What about stabilization and other audio aspects?
iPhone 16 Pro had perhaps marginally better image stabilization, really smooth, but its microphone sounded a little shallower, maybe less rich than the Samsung's.
They all have those audio isolation features now, right?
They do. Audio eraser on Samsung and Google, audio mix on iPhone. We found Samsung's version did a better job isolating sound without degrading the overall quality as much as the Pixel's did.
And Apple's audio mix.
It's trying something different, kind of remixing sounds, but honestly, it often just sounded a bit overprocessed.
Okay, the moment of truth. We've gone through 10 categories. After all that testing, which camera system came out on top overall?
Well, looking across everything, based on this analysis, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra's camera system was judged the overall winner.
Wow, okay. And the other two?
The iPhone 16 Pro and the Google Pixel 9 Pro ended up in what was basically a tie for second place. Very close.
Now, it's really important to stress, isn't it, that camera preference can be super subjective.
Oh, absolutely. What one person loves, another might not. And as we saw, each phone definitely had areas where it really excelled.
Right. Pixel's detail and macro, iPhone's low light accuracy, Samsung's zoom consistency.
Exactly. So while the S25 Ultra showed the most consistent high performance across the board in these tests, honestly, all three of these phones offer fantastic, top-tier smartphone camera experiences.
The choice really depends on what you prioritize as a photographer.
Precisely. Your shooting style, the conditions you shoot in most often, that'll influence which one feels best for you.
Well, that was quite the tour through the latest in phone cameras. Hopefully that gives you a clearer picture, pun intended, of what these amazing devices can do.
It's just incredible seeing how far mobile photography keeps advancing, isn't it? Makes you wonder what's next.
It really does. Okay, that's all for this time.
See you next time.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.